The Goat House is back. There's been 13 trades so far this offseason. There are more coming. I'm talking about the biggest candidates to watch for, who could be traded next, and their potential landing spots. We'll also touch on the Cooper Kupp situation at the end of this video. Dallas Goedert is a big name to watch. It sounds like the Eagles are definitely open to trading him, even as surprising as that is, especially if they can get a fourth-round pick. If they get a fourth, it sounds like they will deal him. Could end up being a fifth. I think a fourth's pretty reasonable for a really solid, polished tight end that could fit any offense, in my opinion, but you would think the Eagles maybe would have tried to do this before free agency because they just lost a bunch of players. Do they want to ship off another important player? Because the reason to do it, I think, would be to clear space or not give him that bonus this year. But the main reason it's surprising, he's been very, very important to the Philadelphia Eagles, showing up in big-time moments. Look at the Saints game this year, but always showing up in the playoffs, not just this year, every year. Take Goedert away from this team, still maybe the best team in football, but it would have been a lot tougher. I mean, he was huge for them, especially in some of the Packers and the Rams game in the playoffs, and those two teams played the Eagles closer than the Commanders and even in the Super Bowl than the Chiefs. So it's just so important to the Eagles, but I feel like they maybe feel they can replace him, but fourth gets it done, fifth could make it happen. Colts, Shane Steichen's their head coach, obvious fit. They badly need a tight end, maybe multiple of them. I would say I would lock it in. I'm that close. Lock it in. He's going to the Colts, but they have the 14th pick in the NFL draft. There are two star tight ends that are going to go in the top 14. I think the second one off the board, I think the floor is the Colts at 14. Maybe they're like, hey, we're getting one of these guys. Maybe we have to trade up, but we're going to get one of these guys. They tried to trade up for Bowers last year, so that kind of makes it a little iffy on if they would trade for Dallas Goedert. The Chargers badly need a tight end. They let Stone Smart walk. Not that he was going to be a number one anyways. He's on the Jets, actually. I don't think he's going to be a number one tight end, but they definitely need him. But part of me is like the Chargers don't want to do anything right now. Are they bold enough to trade for a guy, trade a pick and pay a guy? Maybe they're insisting on getting a tight end in this draft. A lot of talk about Loveland because he played for Harbaugh at Michigan. I think they would have to trade up for him. He's going to go a lot earlier than what people think. A lot of Broncos and Chargers fans like, oh, we're just going to draft that guy. I don't know if he's going to be there. I really, Warren's definitely not. I don't think either are going to be there. In the Jets, definitely can use a tight end one, but another team, I think one of those tight ends, especially Warren, makes a lot of sense for them. So the draft kind of affects the Colts and the Jets here. The Broncos would make sense. They just added Evan Engram. They could still honestly add Goedert because they're probably going to need a guy that can block a little bit better than Engram as well. Engram's mainly a move tight end, almost a receiver. But do I see them jumping on this now after they gave Engram a pretty sizable contract, $12.5 million per year. So Rams could be a little sneaky. I just see Goedert in that scheme and them in that system and being a lot better, but they do have a number of tight ends. And the Giants really could use one, but there's more of dark horse teams here. I'm really looking at the Colts, the best fit. Chargers probably would take the biggest step with Goedert, and the Jets could make some sense as well, but the draft is makes things interesting especially for these three teams, especially for the Colts and the Jets. But it's going to be pretty crazy if the Eagles move on from yet another important player from their Super Bowl roster, and it's certainly possible. Joe Milton, a lot of talk about Milton after he played in that one game at the end of the year and looked really solid. We know he has a cannon of an arm, like elite arm strength. His balls have one speed. They all have one speed, not much touch on the ball. He could get a little wild, a little inaccurate. He struggles on the layup throws. He's pretty damn good down the field. So he still is a guy that you really want to work with here. You really have to work with, but a guy you want to work with, like I'm saying. So tricky one right now. My money's on the Patriots not trading him yet. When they drafted him, I figured they were going to have him sit behind May, and May's eventually going to look really good, and they're going to flip Milton for a much better pick than they drafted him. So I knew it was coming. This seems a little early. They might require, a team to give him a fourth. Does a team want to do that right now? He's still a little bit of a mystery. The Patriots hang on to him. They might be able to get a third out of him. They keep hanging on to him a little bit, or the value can go down. Either way. Maybe teams only want to give a fifth right now. Is it worth it for the Patriots? I don't see it being worth it, but it was pretty interesting they added Josh Dobbs to the mix there. But I would love the fit with the Rams. Perfect scenario. Yes, he's sitting behind someone again, but it's not Drake May, who is a lengthy future with the Patriots. It's Matt Stafford. Learn from him. Stafford known for his strong arm. Learn from McVay. I think a great situation. Alex Van Pelt's there, who was the offense coordinator of the Patriots last year. He's on the staff at the Rams now. Giants would make a lot of sense. I think Brian Daboll would like him a lot. And they're focused on either Rodgers or Russell Wilson in the draft, though. So do they want to add a third option in there? But I do view him as a fit for that offense and a guy that could potentially play for them early on. Steelers trying to figure out their situation still. Okay, I think the Rams and the Giants stand out the most. The Titans still trying to figure out their quarterback situation. I think they're going to draft Cam Ward. I really think it's Rams, Giants, then it's Steelers, Titans, then you bring in the Colts. They already have a strong arm quarterback that might be getting benched down Anthony Richardson. Saints, do I see him in a Kellen Moore offense? Not really. If I did, I would have him in the top tier of teams. Honestly, the Jags would make a lot of sense behind Trevor Lawrence, who does have durability concerns. They already did add Nick Mullins. I don't think that really ends the discussion of this, but maybe it's a little less likely. The Browns, they already did trade for Kenny Pickett. They're looking at Russell Wilson. They're probably going to draft one second overall. If not, they'll draft one somewhere early. So maybe a little less likely than those other teams. Fair fit, the Rams. Giants, I think, would be a little bit interested. Maybe those other teams. Again, I think more likely he's on the Patriots for another year, traded next offseason, and some team might be even more desperate, a little more comfortable then to actually do it. Garrett Bradbury, the Vikings center, it was announced yesterday that he is going to be cut. The Vikings are going to cut him unless they find a trade. It's always an interesting strategy, kind of worked out for the Jags with Christian Kirk trading him to the Texans. If multiple teams get interested and they feel, now that it's obvious he's going to be cut by the Vikings, other teams are probably making plans. God, if we really have to have him, we better trade for him. It'd be a very late pick or swap. Again, could be cut. 3 teams really stand out, like really good fit. Is an outside zone blocker, actually a really solid run blocker, not a great pass protector at all, but teams that really value running the football and need help there could be interested. Seattle Seahawks, new offense coordinator Clint Kubiak, outside zone scheme, really solid fit. He was with the Vikings before as well, familiar Bradbury. Sam Darnold's going to be the quarterback. That's who was snapping. I'm really watching the Seattle Seahawks. I'm expecting him to be on the Seahawks at some point, whether it's a trade or a cut. But the Falcons make a lot of sense as well. It just depends on if they feel good about what's on the roster at the position already. But they definitely should have some interest. And the 49ers could use a center, really solid outside zone, fit here. Bradbury and the 49ers. So those 3 teams make a lot of sense. Again, really keep an eye on the Seahawks for Garrett Bradbury. That's one I definitely could see, but I could see the other teams as well. The Giants could use a center. They'll question if it's as much of a scheme fit as these other teams. The Texans, definitely a fit. Already traded for Ingram. They feel like they may have some in-house guys that could battle for the position. Maybe they're interested in Bradbury if he is cut. Packers, I think they have in-house guys. I think they're going to shuffle the line around, and they have a center. But this kind of a little bit of a dark horse team here would be a fit. Teams mentioned when it comes to centers, Patriots after they cut David Andrews, and the Chargers, for the future, or put him at guard. Probably not, and they're not the best scheme fits anyways for Bradbury. I'm not counting on those teams. Really like the top 3 teams I have listed, and again, I'm really keeping an eye on those Seattle Seahawks for Bradbury, whether he's traded or cut. But watch for the Falcons and Niners as well. Bryce Huff, the Eagles pass rusher, didn't play a ton this year. It was a big free agency signing. He played pretty well as a rotation guy for the Jets, the previous year. We talked about him a little bit more earlier in the offseason. It's kind of being brought up again. He'll have a big bonus kick in closer to the start of the year. It's just the way the Eagles structure their contracts. So it'll be a late pick, late swap, something like that. Eagles already tried him out. They don't really love him, obviously, based off this year. They'll take something for him. Niners could use another pass rusher. They missed on Joey Bosa. Huff would fit opposite of Nick Bosa, actually. Sometimes they like to have one of the pass rushers. Well, Nick Bosa is more of a defensive end, and the opposite side, a guy that can stand up and rush or drop back in that scheme. And Robert Saleh is now their defense coordinator once again, and he is very familiar with Bryce Huff with their time in New York playing for the Jets, being with the Jets. The Falcons, same thing with Jeff Ulbrich, their new defense coordinator, was the defense coordinator for the Jets when Huff was there. Obviously, definitely need more pass rushers. They added Leonard Floyd, who actually just came from the Niners, but they still need more. Commanders are in on Trey Hendrickson, who we'll talk about. They were probably going to be in on Myles Garrett if he was available. Obviously not anymore. Dan Quinn doesn't really seem to care. If you're a traditional 4-3-M, which he prefers, or if you're kind of a stand-up, guy that maybe fits more of the mold of a outside linebacker as an edge rusher, he doesn't really seem to mind these days. I think he does prefer more of the physical defensive end. Huff is not that, but I could definitely see them being interested if they feel they cannot get Hendrickson or if he's too pricey. Chargers could definitely use a guy like Huff. They're just a little stubborn when making moves right now. And is this a move that they really want to make? Trade a pick and pay him for a guy that might not work? I don't know. Titans, I don't think they want to trade picks, but they definitely could use a pass rusher he would fit. The Ravens, again, they're a smart organization. I don't know if anybody should trade a pick and pay Bryce Huff unless he takes a major pay cut, but it would fit. Panthers, again, would fit. They have Clowney. They added Patrick Jones. Definitely could use another one. It's just I'm not really fully counting on them. Wasn't going to put the Bengals, but, man, they're focused on so many different things. They're hesitant to pay Hendrickson even, so would they actually do this? I don't know. There's a few fits that stand out, mainly Niners, Falcons, but the Commanders aren't afraid to make trades, aren't afraid to do much right now, and they definitely could use a pass rusher, especially. I mean, they badly need a pass rusher right now, but especially if they miss out on one of the top guys. I think that the whole Trey Hendrickson thing, they're trying to do that, and that kind of hurt them, I think, when adding, potentially adding another pass rusher in free agency. So they're kind of holding out hope they can get him. We'll see what happens. But they've already traded a ton of picks over the last year or less than that. So very interesting situation going on with Washington. They made their offense better. They've traded a lot of picks. The defense, maybe, I don't know if it's better. It actually might be the opposite, but around the same. But it's been an interesting offseason for them. Let's talk about multiple Bengals players. Trey Hendrickson, the big one. They're looking for a first-round pick. I don't think a team's going to trade that because he's 30 years old. He needs a big contract, and it sounds like teams are good with the contract. They're not good at the Bengals asking price. So I don't think a team's going to do that. I think they'll trade a day 2 pick and more. Could it be multiple day 2 picks? Maybe that's possible. I think maybe it could be a lone second or a second and a fifth or a sixth. It could be a third and a fourth or a third and a fifth. I don't know if the Bengals would accept that. The Bengals are very stubborn with paying guys and with trading guys. They're stubborn making any big moves, splash moves in the offseason, obviously, as well, to better their team. So it's very interesting what's going on there. Commanders, we know they're interested. They should be interested, at least still. And they are not afraid to trade picks. Seems like a good fit in Dan Quinn's defense. The Falcons were interested as well. They don't have a lot of spending money right now, but they do in the future. He needs an extension that would cost future money, and they definitely should be interested still. The Colts have made their defense better in the secondary, which they needed. They're definitely going to need more help at the edge position, something more consistent. Lou Anarumo, former defense coordinator of the Bengals, definitely would want Hendrickson there. They make a lot of sense. Lions and Packers, both two NFC North teams we haven't heard anything about when it comes to Trey Hendrickson, anything firm. But I would watch those two teams. Definitely a solid fit. Remember the Packers switched schemes last year. They both need another pass rusher in there. Obviously Hutchinson's coming back for the Lions, but definitely both would like to have another big-time pass rusher in there, both contenders. And they have some space this year. Not a ton in the future, though, so that's kind of the issue there. But they can push some back from this year into the future. It's definitely doable. So the Lions make some sense there. I mean, both of them make sense. But Cardinals have been interested. We heard they were interested in Hendrickson, but they signed Josh Sweat since then, so I think a little less likely. Chargers could use another pass rusher. They're a little stubborn to make these big splash moves right now. The Dolphins have been, believe it or not, been in on pass rushers. I don't think they want to spend a ton, though, so more of a dark horse. And you got to mention the Eagles are letting a lot of guys go, and they might even trade Goedert. They're going to have a little bit of space then. They're always looking for more pass rushers, ways to get better. They were going to be interested in Myles Garrett if he was available, so I think you have to mention the Eagles, but I don't know if I'm counting on them being like that top team to be in on him, but Commanders kind of lead the way, and there's some other teams this could happen, or the Bengals are going to continue to be stubborn probably, though, and them doing that kind of hurt their offseason. They weren't able to get better because they didn't really have a plan. They don't know how much money's being accounted for between in the future and now for Hendrickson. Chase would just be future, and T. Higgins, so who we're going to talk about in a second, but very interesting situation going on with the Bengals this offseason. Jermaine Pratt, the Bengals linebacker, was seeking a trade for some time now. We talked about him earlier in the offseason. I think he'll be worth a late pick or a pick swap even at this point. Could even be cut. I said watch for the Colts a while ago. I'm still watching for the Colts. They could use another linebacker, Lou Anarumo. is very familiar with Jermaine Pratt being the defense coordinator of the Bengals, and that's the only place that Pratt has played. I'm still expecting him to end up on the Colts at some point, whether it's trade or cut. Niners definitely could use another linebacker. They lost Trey Greenlaw. I don't think they were too upset about that, but they could use someone like this to pair with Fred Warner. I think it'd be a solid fit. They have a load of draft picks because the compensatory picks, and they'll have more next year as well. So they could definitely afford to give up a late pick. Won't make a dent in them. And they'll bring in Pratt. I think could play pretty well for them. Raiders lost a couple good linebackers. I think would be a solid fit. Why not? Titans, I don't know if they really want to trade even a lower pick. They don't really want to trade anything, but they badly need another linebacker. And the Rams, they don't really value linebacker enough to make a trade for one in the past. Do they finally do that? They definitely could use an upgrade there. I think that possibly could happen. I'm mainly looking at those first three, mainly looking at the first one, the Colts. But then the Niners and the Raiders, and then the Titans, Rams are kind of wild cards, and the dark horse teams. The Panthers could use another linebacker, but they do have a few guys on the roster that could step up. They could draft one as well. They could draft a hybrid guy that like a Jalen Walker or a Jihad Campbell. Both those guys could make sense for them, in the first, or if Campbell slips through to them after that. I don't think that would happen actually. The Falcons could use another one. They did sign Diablo, and the Cardinals signed a couple guys, but could use a linebacker. Tampa could use one for the future. More of the dark horse teams there. I'm really looking at the Colts, and after that, it's 49ers and Raiders for Jermaine Pratt. Things kind of got quiet on him, but something's got to happen. It's hard to see him playing for the Bengals are just stalling on everything right now. It's crazy, but I'd expect something to be done with Jermaine Pratt, whether it's a trade or a cut. T. Higgins. Now, I'll say this right now. I don't think he's actually going to be dealt. Things could easily change at any given second. I still believe the Bengals want to keep him. They currently have him on the tag. They want to extend him long term. Maybe they're not close to that extension. Will he play on the tag? We have to get further down the line to kind of realize, okay, they'll trade him. It's certainly possible. It certainly could come about. But right now, there isn't. It's a little different than the other guys we talked about. Those other guys, like right now, we know they're on the trading block. It could happen at any time, or maybe it doesn't. But T. Higgins, we might have to wait a little bit longer to know for sure if he's actually a trade candidate or not. Typically, I think he would be worth a first-round pick, maybe a late first-round pick, maybe even a little bit more. Maybe that's a little much. But since he's on the tag, guys are worth less when on the tag. They got to trade for him on the tag, and they got to give him a new deal. And the team's only trading him because they can't reach a new deal. You lose leverage. So, but still a very talented, valuable player. I think going to be worth a little bit more than DK, even though it's a little bit different of a situation. Day 2 pick plus additional picks here for T. Higgins. Several teams will be interested, highlighted by the Patriots. They were going to be interested if he was a free agent. They'll be willing to trade for him. They'll be willing to pay him whatever he wants. The Panthers, they're looking for another outside receiver. They haven't added a receiver. You thought they would have. Would really fit what they're looking for, an outside contested catch receiver. So that would make sense as well. I think those two teams highlight this list. Chargers would make a ton of sense. It sounded like they were in on DK, but they were lowballing offers. They're a little stubborn. Would they do it for T. Higgins? Maybe. It makes sense, but would they actually do it? The Packers have been looking for a receiver. They haven't added one yet. I think they would be interested. The Raiders have a ton of future money. They barely spent any this year. They let guys walk, so they badly need an outside receiver, so why not? They have picks. They can trade. Then some dark horse teams, Seattle. At first glance, it's like they got rid of DK, and then for a second, would they trade that and more for Higgins? That would sound ridiculous to some people, but got to give Darnold some options. You get younger with Higgins here, maybe more upside, so it actually could make sense. Brian Callahan connection with Tennessee. They need another receiver. I'm just not counting on them trading picks. Texans were in on DK. They did add Kirk, but it didn't stop them from being in on more guys, so maybe they could be in on T. Higgins. Cardinals are kind of a sneaky team. They're kind of quietly in on receivers. And then Denver, is he too much like Cortland Sutton? Would they move on from Sutton to get Higgins? That'd be interesting. Sutton involved in a trade for Higgins. That'd be pretty cool. But, yeah, a lot of teams you can highlight here. I see some people saying the Jags. Jags, I don't know what they're up to right now. They're adding a bunch of guys, not spending a ton. Do they want to make this move? Is he too much the same role as Brian Thomas Jr.? So I don't know. The Patriots would be the main team to watch along with the Panthers. And then some teams like the Chargers are tough to figure out. Like you would think, like, yes, it makes a lot of sense. They did add Mike Williams, a boundary receiver, but they're a little hesitant to be in on the splash moves right now. So I think it's mainly Patriots and Panthers, and the Raiders would be highly interested. Chargers and Packers a little to be determined. Seahawks would be interesting if it actually happens. I think it's a little more likely than dark horse for Seattle. But maybe they do want to build to the draft. They're trying to collect some draft picks here. So looking at Geno and DK. So this one we might have to wait a little bit longer to figure out what the actual plan is for T. Higgins and the Bengals. Cooper Kupp free agency seems to be a hot topic right now. You swear we were talking about an elite receiver in free agency, but I mean, he is a popular guy, a guy that can make your team better. But it is interesting because you got a lot of conflicting reports right now, legitimate reports, like from legitimate people, starting with the Broncos. I mean, you got legitimate people saying that's the team to watch. They're the favorites to get him. They are very much in on Cooper Kupp. And then you got legitimate people saying they're not even close to interested. It's not happening. They're not getting Cooper Kupp. They're not interested. So we got to meet in the middle somewhere. It's hard to believe that they were never picked up the phone or never discussed the possibility of Cooper Kupp. So to me, based on everything I've gathered and my opinion, I think they're interested, but probably for the right price. So that would mean maybe both sides are wrong. But are they the top dog for him? Maybe not. Maybe they are. Are they absolutely not interested? And maybe they're not. But maybe they have a little bit of interest for the right price. So very interesting there. Some people are convinced they're getting him. Some people are saying there's no shot. So it's interesting. Packers are very much in on Cooper Kupp. They're looking for a veteran receiver. Does he want it? I heard he prefers West Coast, but open to other things for the right price. So does he want to go play in the cold in Green Bay? I think that's what it'll come down to. And are they offering enough for him to do that? It's an appealing spot. It's a really solid team. Interesting, too, because Jaden Reed is also a slot receiver, but he's super inconsistent. So somebody would be seeing less snaps, at least less snaps in the slot than they have been in the past between Kupp and Reed. I think it would be Reed then if they brought in Kupp. So that's what makes it interesting. But they are looking for more consistent receivers. They have good receivers, but not consistent receivers. Patriots are very much interested. It sounds like Kupp prefers other teams just because they're more of contenders, and he prefers West Coast, doesn't need West Coast. Maybe he doesn't want to play in the cold, especially at this point of his career with all the durability concerns. It's a legitimate thing. With the hamstring, if it gets really cold out, you're way more likely to, mess up a muscle like that. I'm just using an example. But in my experience, at least, I mean, these guys are built different. But so I could see it for a guy like that, wanting to stay, warm weather, close to home, West Coast. But also the Patriots might not. I also heard they might not be offering the most, but I feel like Kupp is a little more interested in other teams from what I've gathered. Patriots have had bad luck on trying to find a receiver. Jaguars are apparently unlikely. Some even say they're not even interested right now. And that's a little surprising to me given the Liam Cohen connection, given they traded their slot receiver in Christian Kirk. I was really predicting before Kupp was cut, I said he was going to get cut, and the Jags are the team to watch because it's just such a great fit, a need, the connection, But apparently it is very unlikely right now. So I thought that was quite interesting, quite surprising. Seahawks are very much in on Cooper Kupp. I question the fit a little bit. Again, teams only need one starting slot receiver. There's not enough snaps for multiple slot receivers. In a rotation there is. But the Seahawks had the number one slot receiver last year in terms of playing time in the slot rate. Jackson Smith-Njigba. He was always a slot receiver at Ohio State, and he always was in college, or in NFL, in his short career, and he just went off last year, one of the top slot receivers in football. Do you want to disrupt that? So if you bring in Kupp, I'm sure JSN can play other spots. It's a little bit, will he be as good, playing multiple? You might get the most out of him just playing in the slot. Kupp has been a top slot guy as well. He's starting to decline in terms of separation, and that's from the slot. It's easier to get separation from the slot because you rarely get pressed from there. So if he goes outside, someone presses him, it's going to be a little tougher. They can make it work, but I think it limits somebody's snap, or both, because if they're mixing and switching, they're both limiting their snaps in the best spot that they play, like their home. So that's tough for me. If they got him, kind of something we already know, like it would tell us that they want to run the piss out of the football, which we already know. Clint Kubiak he's using his dad's offense. His offense feels like it's from the 80s. It's run, play, always run on first down, run to set up short yardage on third and fourth down, maybe run again or an easier pass, play action pass. So they're going to run the shit out of the ball. Adding Kupp would be for his blocking. They don't really care. Hey, we got 2 slot receivers. Don't really care. We're going to get a guy that can just block. I don't care what alignment he is. So that's what it would tell me. So that doesn't make it the most appealing situation for Seattle, because running the football is very important. You have to be able to run the football, but is an offense like that going to get you to the promised land? Is it going to get you where you want to go? Some more teams for Cooper Kupp. The Saints have been brought up a bit. They're actually very interested. The question is Cooper Kupp like a non-contender? If they pay up, then maybe. Another team looking to run the ball a lot. The Vikings have been brought up a little bit, not as much as the other teams, but they're supposedly supposed to be in. Kevin O'Connell connection with Cooper Kupp. But I think it would be for the right price. I don't think they're going to pay up for Kupp, and they are bringing in Rondale Moore, slot receiver, for a visit. So that kind of tells you the Vikings are looking elsewhere right now. Cowboys, for the right price, they are interested, but it has to be the right price. They're not going to pay up a lot, and they've kind of been deemed unlikely for Cooper Kupp. Sneaky teams. I don't really have a prediction right now. It's up in the air. We got conflicting reports. I could totally see him ending up on one of these sneaky teams. Cardinals haven't been mentioned. I have heard that they're looking for some more speed at receiver specifically, so that would kind of take them out. But I keep hearing Kupp prefers West Coast. Cardinals are West Coast. They're looking for a slot receiver. Raiders are West Coast. They have a couple slot options there. They need a receiver, though, in general. You can see that. Pittsburgh hasn't really been brought up. They were before they added DK. Definitely could use a slot receiver still. Lions don't necessarily need them, but golf connection there. They play indoors, so maybe not being West Coast and warm weather doesn't mean a ton. Maybe there, I don't know. Texans added a slot receiver in Christian Kirk, but it sounds like they're in on all these receivers when they're available. The Falcons, there's a lot of coaching connections there from the ties with the Rams. They could use another receiver. I haven't heard the team name brought up, but it does make some sense there. But it's a mystery right now. The Jags make the most sense. If you make a checklist, they make the most sense. They've been deemed unlikely. Some even say not even interested at this point. Maybe he's just asking for too much, so maybe that's what it is for them. So it is interesting. It's not the craziest free agent that's available, not the best, but it's starting to heat up because the talk and the conflicting reports. So I'm very curious what happens with Cooper Kupp here. But there you have it for the latest updates on trade candidates and Cooper Kupp watch. We're going to do a winners losers video of free agency. Was kind of waiting on maybe Kupp to sign. It should be any time. Cam Robinson's still sitting out there. But we will make that video this weekend either way. And then we're going to work on that updated mock draft post week 1 of free agency, and it's kind of fully draft season then. So really exciting times here at the Goat House. A lot of draft content on the way. We'll be live during day 1 of the NFL draft like we always are. Fun times. Join us. But that's going to do it. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.